Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with aBlogtoWatch. Today I'm going to review the Gerald Charles Masterlink Perpetual Calendar Watch. This is quite a fantastic integrated bracelet watch. It's not for everyone, but I'm quite impressed at what Gerald Charles was able to do here. There's a lot of context to discuss here, but let me try to give you the summary. Gerald Charles is an independent brand today, but it was originally started by Gérald Genta. He had to call the brand Gerald Charles because he actually sold the rights to the Gérald Genta brand. And during the end of his life, he produced a lot of watches under Gerald Charles. He actually didn't own the brand at the end. He merely worked for it. And the people that he worked for have now, in large part, continued it and grown the brand in a very, very big way. So the Gerald Charles brand very much is the DNA of Gérald Genta, the great and famous designer behind such popular watches as the Royal Oak under Audemars Piguet or the Nautilus under Patek Philippe and many, many others. But this is not supposed to be a discussion of Gérald Genta, but it is important to know where this design came from. They call it the Masterlink case right now, and it's the integrated bracelet version of the Maestro, which is slightly similar looking. It's asymmetric on purpose, but I think it's a really cool design. Is it a square? Not quite. Is it a cushion? Not quite. Is it round? Not quite. It's got a lot of interesting features to it. And the Masterlink also comes in the three-hand model. This perpetual calendar version is the fancy version. But this is actually the lesser of the two fancy versions. Actually, I prefer this solid dial more. But the Gerald Charles Masterlink Perpetual Calendar also comes in something called the Sapphire version. And that one has a mostly entirely skeletonized dial where you have some elements that are played on the sapphire crystal, but it's skeletonized. And I actually prefer the solid dial. You can see that the dial here is textured though. It's got these vertical lines to it. And Gerald Charles calls this the Fumé or smoked dial. And you can see that it has an element of that. When I see this, do I think Fumé? No. But I can understand why they would go with that, because if you look closely, there's this smoked style gradient in the gray colors on the dial. What I like most about the dial is the symmetry. It's easy to read. You have a full set of perpetual calendar information there in a very logical way. There's really nothing you need. One thing that I would have liked to see in the dial of the Masterlink Perpetual Calendar is, of course, a running seconds hand. That does not exist on the watch, but I can forgive it. We do have the main hour and minutes in the center. This subdial here over to the left is the day of the week. Here's the month, and it's very difficult to see right here, but between January and March, where February would be, there's another small window, and it's colored red there. That is the leap year indicator, and it changes color, so it is a little bit different of a leap year indicator, but it's there, and that, of course, that's an important setting for the perpetual calendar because you have to adjust it on the leap years when there's a February 29th. The lower subdial, which is a little bit larger, has the date as well as a moon phase with a nice photorealistic moon. It's a really nice layout, and it's all thanks to a movement that they say is in-house. This is exclusive to the company. This is a movement that they call the GCA11000. This is a really lovely movement. You can see the bridges there in the gold tones. It's very elegant. A micro-rotor that has the Gerald Charles logo, but looks like half of a soccer ball. I think it's supposed to look that way, but it's kind of nice to see the different textures. You see the perlage polishing underneath it on the movement. One thing that is interesting about the design of this movement is it's supposed to look a little bit like a map of Geneva. Well, what do I mean by that? I'm trying to put in the right angle here. It's a little bit difficult. So there's this line right here, which is supposed to represent a body of water and a road and some elements. And if you look at a map of Geneva, yeah, it's roughly like this. You'd have to align a certain part the right way. And then right here, it says Gerald Charles and then Geneva. And then there's a black stone. And that's supposed to represent the location of the Geneva headquarters of Gerald Charles, which I've been to, which is a nice office, and it's on Rue de Mont Blanc, and that's supposed to represent where it is in the city. So that's a nice detail there. Most movements like this don't have that nice level of design nor any type of story around that. And given that it's an automatic, I appreciate it all the more. I'm not a huge fan of manually wound perpetual calendars because it just means that you're going to forget to set your watch on a regular basis and it's going to be off. But it being an automatic, it just means that your calendar is going to be set more of the time. Inset pushers on the side of the case there. I'm not a huge fan of inset pushers, but at least they're symmetrical. Sometimes I have to say I see inset pushers that are not symmetrical on the side of the case or like in random positions, and it looks ugly. I gotta say, it looks a lot worse when the inset pushers are not symmetrical. The case is an all titanium, an interesting set of different finishes here. And the Masterlink is a beguiling design because it's got a lot of different shapes and things going on. This particular finishing, which is sort of this darker sandblasted finishing in the center of the wide links, the outer links are polished, and it creates almost like a two-tone effect, even though it's all titanium. That's a very interesting outcome of finishing titanium in different ways. The crown, which is screw down and helps provide 100 meters of water resistance, is a shape that's similar to the case. So it's got this kind of squared cushion shape, which I actually find very charming and I like very much. And I thought that they did a good job there. And they also made it so that, at least on this watch, it kind of tightens at a point where it looks in the correct proportional or I guess symmetrical position where it's not kind of like off a little bit. I mean, you could tighten it even more, but it has kind of like a natural little position there, which I think just suits it very nicely. Little touches on expensive watches that you want to see. This bracelet is not quite sized for my wrist. Actually, before I put the bracelet on, I want to show you a little bit about the way the bracelet is designed. Not really your standard design in terms of having pins or screws in the side, but there's these screws here that open up little latches, I guess you could say, and that helps remove the links. So a little bit more of a process, but it's not like you're going to be adjusting the bracelet all the time. It's very trendy now to have toolless systems for adjusting bracelets, and that's great to be able to adjust the bracelet without tools, but are you doing it all the time? I don't understand why it's such a big deal. It's like a 5-minute process and then boom, you're done. But let's be honest, adjusting the bracelet on this watch is going to take a lot more than a 5-minute time. You can see on the wrist that it looks very elegant, 40 millimeters wide, as I said, which for a cushion or square case is bigger, but I wouldn't call it overly sized. Only 10 millimeters thick, so it's relatively thin. And as I said, it's really great that there's 100 meters of water resistance, which is very sporty for a timepiece like this, especially with a crystal of this shape. This is a entirely unique crystal shape. This is totally custom. And these types of non-round sapphire crystals is exactly where you have a lot of trouble with water resistance. So that this has 100 meters of water resistance versus 30 or 50 meters is a delightful surprise. And again, on the back of the watch, the sapphire crystal is also in that strange kind of shape that has a bunch of different asymmetries to it. This is a very interesting engineering approach to achieve this level of water resistance with these types of special shapes of sapphire crystals. A lot of the credit goes not just to Gerald Charles, but the designer Octavio Garcia. He's the one who's brought a lot of the Gérald Genta designs into the modern era. I want to say the 21st century, but a lot of them were designed in the 21st century. So you have the look and feel that came from Gerald Genta, but Octavio Garcia was the man who made these very wearable. So he's the designer inspired by Gerald Genta. Obviously, there's a few levels of understanding and context there to truly know what they were going for. There's Gerald Charles, there's Gerald Genta, there's Octavio Garcia. Who is what? Who are all these people? So it can be a little bit confusing, but they've come together, all these personalities, real, fake, alive, and dead, to make really a truly nice product that is popular. Now, what's popular about this? The integrated bracelet with a perpetual calendar is sort of your, hey, look, I have money kind of watch. I'm not saying this is all about showing off. There's very much an understated, under the radar element to this design. But this is sort of a subtle nod saying, oh, yeah, I could have just had a watch that told the time, but I wanted to have the perpetual calendar on there because I'm cultured and have disposable income. You don't need precious metals because, again, this is all in titanium. It's very light and comfortable, by the way. And you don't have to have a lot of other flashy features on here. But this is still a high-priced watch because of its movement, which is beautiful and highly decorated and complicated, and the overall branding, which is, again, definitely a luxury mark, which is what Gerald Charles is going for. And this is not their most expensive watch by any means. But again, the brand is not per se looking to be democratically priced. It's an exclusive brand, and they have a lot of fun in the process, and they're cool watches. Price for the Gerald Charles Masterlink Perpetual calendar differs a little bit depending on if you have the Fumé version or the Sapphire crystal dial. And it's a big price difference, and I have to say I don't entirely know why, but in any event, my preference is the solid Fumé dial because it has that full traditional dial. Obviously, it has a lot of decorative elements there, but it's also very legible and easy to live with. So I think this is a cool watch. I've been very enthusiastic by it. I don't think it looked as good in the pictures, but in person and on the wrist, this is really a fine timepiece. And I just think that it's a really cool one, especially given the competition out there. Again, price for the Gerald Charles Masterlink Perpetual calendar in this Fumé style is $78,800, and the Sapphire crystal dial is $87,500. Big difference. You can see more on the aBlogtoWatch.com website, and I'd love to hear what you think about this Gerald Charles watch and other Gerald Charles watches in the comments below. Thanks.